This is a big situation going on right now. We're having thousands of cattle die right now, and this is a major hit to our food supply, and we're having hundreds that are dying at once, and this is going on in multiple states. All right, and we are also seeing pushed as a solution this GMO cattle. Okay, genetically modified cattle has been approved in the US, and they are now putting it into the food supply, and they're saying this is a solution to all of this cattle that is dying. There's thousands of cattle dying right now in multiple states, and this is an emergency for our food supply chain. Okay, and just like all these other emergencies, just like all these situations, don't worry, they have a solution, and it's more genetically modified frankenfood to put in your body. So they are genetically modifying cattle right now on ranches, and it's being distributed into the US food supply, and they're saying, hey, this is going to be the solution for these thousands of cattle that have just died. All right, so this is a major situation. We had almost 400 die at a single time in one of these states, and this is getting worse, and this is spreading to more states, and they are putting out warnings saying, hey, this isn't going to get better, and we need to take this genetically modified Angus beef cattle, we need to introduce it even more to deal with this problem and into the food supply. All right, so please hit it up for me down there really quick before we get into this, because this is big news and people need to know about this, and our food supply is under attack. All right, so let's dive into what's going on here. You can see here that we have emergencies where cattle are dying by the thousands in multiple states. All right, so we have multiple states being hit right now. We have Kansas, we have Nebraska, and we also have Iowa being hit hard right now. And Kansas, just in the past week, they've been dealing with this and having hundreds of cattle dying from this heat wave. Okay, they're saying this is an emergency heat wave that's been hitting this part of the country, okay, and we're having thousands of cattle die. And we had a very similar situation last year. We had 2,000 cattle die at once. We have a situation in Iowa where 370 cattle died. Okay, 370 died at once, and they had to call in the Iowa government to come help them dispose of all of these cattle, right? Because they're apparently not okay, and they need to get rid of them, right? And there's also so many of them that it's hard to deal with 370 cattle, and that can be devastating for these ranchers, okay? And one thing that was speculated last year was potentially these cows were being hit with some kind of microwave weapon, okay, some kind of energy weapon. And I'm not saying that's what happened, but I remember last year people were very suspicious, and they were speculating, hey, maybe these thousands of cows are getting hit hard with some kind of microwave weapon, because even radio towers from the phones, okay, the radio phone towers, they operate on a microwave radio frequency. So we're always being microwaved. And who's to say that with these new towers, these 5G towers that operate at very high frequency, and even the previous generation ones, who's to say they can't be turned up the microwaves, okay, to create these heat dome effects? There's also a lot of other factors that are creating this as well. The sun is entering a grand solar maximum as well. But these are the things that are happening, and the solution that they are presenting is genetically modified beef. So the USDA and the FDA have approved this genetically modified Angus cattle beef to be sold in stores. Okay, so this is probably already happening. This was approved a little bit ago, but they are really ramping up the push for this because we're having thousands of cattle die, and they're saying this is the solution for these ranchers. And a lot of times these ranchers get cornered, okay? These farmers get cornered. They're saying, hey, you have to grow like this, you have to do this, or you're not going to be competitive. We're going to do this, we're going to have someone else come in. And a lot of times they are pressured into these genetically modified systems. All right, so now we're going to have genetically modified beef as well, and this is supposedly to alter its hair genes. Okay, so it's going to grow different hair so it can deal with the heat. That is the theory that they're pushing, is to have genetically modified beef with different hair, shorter hair, so it can deal with the heat a little bit better. Okay, but now it's just a backdoor to get this GM meat. All right, so we already have genetically modified salmon, and now we have genetically modified beef being released into the food supply as well, while thousands of these cows are dying all over the United States, multiple states. This is happening. All right, and we also saw this happened a few months ago as well, and I covered this a little bit, how they are genetically modifying ticks that specifically go after cattle. Okay, so there's these cattle ticks, these Asian blue ticks, that actually cause billions of dollars of damage in South America. Okay, in Brazil, it caused almost $3 billion of damage in cattle. Okay, this was just last year, and this tick is spreading, and it's getting up to the US, and it's infecting the cattle and killing them. Right? These are devastating ticks, and they are also genetically modifying and altering these ticks that go after the cattle, and they are releasing them into the wild. Okay, so all these things are going on with our food supply that could have side effects for our cattle as well. These GMO ticks that are being released, they could have, who knows what kind of consequences for the cattle. Could be a disease vector for them to open up new diseases, especially when they are genetically modifying things. Okay, they're genetically modifying the cattle. They're putting genes in it from other animals. Okay, that opens up disease vectors. And then they're also genetically modifying things like ticks and putting genes in it from other animals as well, opening new disease vectors. And then these new ticks, these GMO ticks, it's a new species technically. This is a new genetically modified organism species, okay? Completely new organism. It's not the same tick anymore, and it's not a Angus beef cow anymore. It's something different now. And then these two things are interacting with each other as well, and sucking blood out of each other. Okay, so this is a very dangerous path that we are heading towards with this genetic manipulation of our food supply, and that's now being pushed as a solution. They're saying, hey, look at all these cattle dying from this tick. We need to have genetically modified ticks to save the cattle, right? And then it's the same concept that we have as well with these cattle dying. Okay, thousands of cattle are dying supposedly from this heat wave, and it is very hot there. It's very hot. It's being over 100 degrees during the day, and even where I'm at, it's 100 degrees right now. You can't escape it in this part of the country. Out west, the Midwest and West, it is very hot right now. And at night, it doesn't get below 70 degrees. Some of these places at night, it's staying around 80 degrees. So just imagine this giant cow being 100 degrees, and then even at night it's still 80 degrees. It can't cool down. It can't cool its body down, and a lot of times they are pushed to the limit. All right, so these things are happening to our food supply right now, and we should not be genetically altering our food supply and opening up these new vectors for potentially even more problems and more diseases to enter our food supply. We had this alpha-gal syndrome that was spreading as well, and then we have these ticks that are being genetically engineered so they don't want to feed on the cattle. Okay, so when they feed on the cattle, they get sick. Right, so all these things are happening. All these things are happening at the same time, and it's very suspicious. So let me know what you guys think down below. What do you think happened to these thousands of cattle? One ranch alone had 370 cattle go out at once in western Iowa. 370, one ranch alone. All right, so this is happening all over the place, and the frequency of it keeps increasing, and it's still super hot. September is going to be brutal. Hopefully it starts cooling down in October. but September is still going to be really bad. And this is a hit to our food supply. All right, so start growing your own food. Get stocked up on food. Get stocked up on beef jerky. Get a ton of beef jerky. That's a standard prep that you should have, and you can cycle through. All right, if you don't eat it by the expiration date, then you can just eat it. All right, get all these things in your prepper pantry. Get stocked up. Get beef jerky. Get canned beef. Get dried out meats, preserved meats. All these things, add them to your pantry, because we could see major problems with our meat food supply with these cattle dying. And we already see how they are attacking the food supply all around the world. Okay, Ireland, they were just forcing hundreds of thousands, okay, of cattle to be culled in Ireland, because they were saying that it's bad for the earth, it's bad for the country, it's bad for everything going on there. And they're going around there measuring the nitrogen levels in the ditches of the cow fields, okay? And if they're too high, they start targeting these farms and targeting these areas. And they targeted so many different counties that it added up to, it was around 200,000 cattle in Ireland. They forced them to be culled, all right? So this is happening all over the world. We are seeing mass die-offs of our bovines and of our food supply, and it seems like an attack. It seems like a direct hit. It seems like they're trying to shut it down. We just had a massive dairy farm fire, and 18,000 dairy cows. This was down in Texas. 18,000 dairy cows wiped out, dead. 18,000. That is a ton. That's a massive dairy farm. 18,000 dairy cows wiped out as well in a major fire. Okay, how many of these fires have we seen targeting our food supply? There was a major fire at a fertilizer food plant. Okay, there was also a fire that just happened a couple days ago that took out 200 cows in a barn. So this stuff is happening everywhere. We are seeing hit after hit to our food supply, and this is just more the reason to grow your own food. I have chickens, all right, and they lay a ton of eggs. I have so many eggs. My refrigerator is filled with eggs, and I have a big basket on my counter filled with eggs, because you can actually keep fresh eggs from the chicken. All right, you can actually keep them on your counter for about a month. You could probably keep them on there for a few months, all right, before they start rotting. But you can keep them out on your counter. They actually have this protective coating. If you don't wash them off, they have this special coating around them where you can keep the eggs on your counter. All right, so that'll just save you a bunch of space. I put the older ones and the ones that I need to wash off into the refrigerator, all right, but that'll save you a bunch of space in your fridge, especially if you have a tiny fridge, like if you're off grid, if you're in an RV or something like that. I live in my RV with my family full time, and our fridge is pretty small in there, all right. It's a propane fridge as well, so we want to be saving energy and conserving it for whatever we put in there, all right. So get these things. There's no excuses. Get these animals now. I'm figuring out a way to get meat birds very soon, all right? I'm trying to get meat birds. I'm trying to just figure out the infrastructure of how I could do it here with my situation. But we are figuring out how to get meat birds as well, so we can have our own meat, because all this stuff's being slowly poisoned, all right? It's all being poisoned, and we need to be growing our own food and making our own local food networks, all right? Because it's going to get to a point where all the food we buy at the grocery store is contaminated with some kind of substance. I don't know if you saw this Fukushima radiation that was just released. The radioactive cesium from that was showing up in the wine in California years later. They can still date the wine with the radioactive cesium in it, and it was showing up in the oranges. It was showing up in the almonds, okay? And they just did another major release of Fukushima and releasing millions of gallons, okay? And they admit that this is going to make its way over to California, and it stays in the oranges and it stays in these trees. Specifically, it seems like these very hard-celled plants, okay, these rigid-celled plants like trees that have wood, it stores these chemicals in it a lot longer, okay, and they're showing up with radioactive cesium in it 18 months later from releases. That's what's happening with oranges and almonds and grapes, right? All these different things, and things are so bad there that they banned food exports. China did, coming out of Japan, okay, because they don't want this radioactive food. They also banned a lot of different cosmetics because they're also related to things in the sea. All right, so this is happening right now. We keep seeing contamination after contamination, and it's one of these things. It's like, how much can somebody take? It's like a slow die off here, all right? A slow process where you are just being bombarded with all these different chemicals and all these different hits, where it's like you're bound to get something. If you're not being proactive, if you're not trying to be healthy and live a healthy lifestyle and grow your own food and eat your own food, then you are going to be contaminated and filled with these toxic chemicals and these heavy metals. So start growing something now, because these states were also having hay emergencies, and that means that they have a 40% reduced hay yield in these states for grazing for their cattle, which is causing a major strain on the food supply for the cattle as well. And they are also having problems getting corn. All right, I saw an article from a couple months ago where they were having massive corn shortages and they could not get bulk corn feed orders in for these feedlots and these cows. All right, so all these things are hitting our food supply. They declared a hay emergency because the yields are down so low. The corn yields are down extremely low right now. The wheat yields are down. The rice yields globally are down, and they keep getting destroyed from drought and from typhoons and hurricanes. This is happening and affecting the global supply chain as well. India just implemented a rice ban. Okay, they are preventing rice from being exported from their country, and they are one of the biggest producers of rice, them and China globally. All right, so we are getting hit nonstop, and our reserves are dwindling. So something is definitely going on, and I want to know what you guys think down below. What do you think happened to these thousands of cattle? Very suspicious that this is going on, and they're also pushing this genetically modified beef on top of it. All right, so what are the odds that these things are coming out at the same time, this GMO beef, to help with these cattle, and then we have thousands of cattle being struck down and devastating these ranches? All right, so let me know down below. Let me know down below if you are a rancher and what you are experiencing in the Midwest and in these states, because it is hot and it is not cooling down, and this is a dangerous situation for people and animals. So let me know down below what you guys think. Please hit it up for me down there. I really appreciate that. I hope you have big blessings for your family and your life, and I hope you have a big old blessed day.